All right, so the last thing that we need to do with our fractions is just converting forms, and then we've got a couple simple applications we'll go over. Conversion of forms, that's just remember we have three forms of a fraction: proper, improper, and a mixed number. If a fraction is a proper fraction, then it's a proper fraction, and there's not any other way to write it except maybe as a decimal, but that's the only way to write it as a fraction. On the other hand, an improper number is a mixed number, can be written as a mixed number, and a mixed number can be written as an improper fraction. Okay, now that brings up the question, which one is better, an improper fraction or a mixed number? Now it's a hard question to answer. So if we had 7/3, that's improper, or 2 1/3, that's a mixed number, and they mean the same thing. For mathematical calculations, an improper fraction is by far the easiest one to work with. If you're adding a bunch of fractions, subtracting, dividing, multiplying, anything where you're doing something mathy to something, you want an improper fraction. It's just easier. For real life, in other words, story problems, if you're answering a story problem, that's when you'd want a mixed number. So 9 times out of 10, you're just going to choose improper. But if you're answering a story problem, you will want a mixed number instead. So if we're going from an improper fraction to a mixed number, the easiest way to do this is to use long division. So if we have 8/3, we divide 3 into 8. It goes 2 times. Take 2 times 3 and get 6. Subtract, and we have 2 left over. So that 2 on top of the 8 becomes our whole number. And then the 2 that's our remainder becomes 2/3. The thirds because that's what I was dividing by. I was dividing by 3. So the thing on top of the divide sign becomes your whole number. Your remainder becomes your numerator, and the thing you're dividing by becomes your denominator. Now, if you're going from a mixed number to an improper fraction, that's actually a little bit easier. If we have a and then b over c is our fraction, it's a times c plus b over c. So if I have 5 and 2/7, I take 5 times 7, and then I'm going to add 2. 5 times 7 is 35. Add 2, and I get 37/7. They mean exactly the same thing, but 5 and 2/7 makes a lot more sense for a real life answer, a story problem answer, and 37/7 is easier to work with mathematically. So that is conversion of forms. Okay, applications. So first of all, write an application or an expression. I'm not just interested in an answer. I want to see your expression. That's part of the, that's what you get credit for, is writing the expression. So we're going to pretend that we still have Hershey bars. And after some party, there's 1 1/4 bars, 2 1/3 bars, and 1 1/2 candy bars left on the tables. How many bars are left over in all? So what would I do with those numbers? Okay, I'd add them all together. So I have 1 1/4 plus 2 1/3 plus 1 1/2. Now I could start to add things up, but remember, what type of a fraction is easier if you're going to do a mathematical calculation? An improper fraction is easier, so let's convert those to improper fractions first. 1 1/4, 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so that's 5/4. 2 1/3, 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, so I have 7/3 for the middle fraction. 1 1/2, 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so I have 3/2 for the third fraction. Now can I just add those up? Can I say 5 plus 7 plus 3? No, I need to get a common denominator. If I'm adding or subtracting fractions, I need to make sure I get a common denominator. What would the common denominator be? Well, 4 says I need a 2 and a 2. 3 says I need a 3, and 2 is taken care of. So the least common denominator would be 12. I'd need to multiply that first fraction by 3, the second fraction by 4 over 4, the third fraction by 6 over 6. So I'd have 15/12 plus 28/12 plus 18/12 is 61/12. Now I just had a story problem, so how do I want to leave my answer? As a mixed number, so I'd convert that, and it's 5 1/12 candy bars. Chantel had only enough paper to print 3/5 of her book report before school. If the report is 10 pages long, how many pages did she print? Now remember, of unless it's percent of or fraction of. Of means multiply. So 3/5 of 10 pages is 3/5 times 10. Now how do I multiply that? 10's not a fraction. Oh, but it is. It's the same as 10 over 1, right? So 3/5 times 10 over 1. 5 goes into 10 two times, so it's 6. She's able to print 6 pages. Okay, that is the last application. And just know on these problems in your homework, you really do need to have the expression for full credit. I don't just care about the answer. And now we will go on to decimals next.